Before any conservation and restoration process may begin, the objects must undergo extensive examinations. One examination method is called technical and technological studies. In our case, the objective was to find out what types of fabrics, pigments, and adhesives were used to make the shroud, as well as to see whether there were any changes in the original image made during previous restorations. Pigments and adhesives are elements of the paint layer. Pigments are mineral components of the paint. They give it its color. Adhesives are organic materials mixed with the pigments. With their help, a paint layer can be formed. They fixate the pigments on a base or a ground. Several methods were used for the studies.
Исследования проводились несколькими методами.
We administered several methods. These include X-ray fluorescence analysis, birefringent crystal method, infrared spectroscopy using a spectrometer, and an IR microscope. X-ray fluorescence analysis helps with defining the elements of the paint layer. This type of study was performed directly on the shroud. It was done using an X-ray fluorescence analyzer on chemical components. It induces X-ray emission. Samples had to be taken for other types of analysis too. These methods are invasive. However, modern technologies allow for reducing the size of the samples.
В процессе инфракрасного исследования проб был использован спектрофотометр с алмазным.
An IR spectrophotometer with a diamond crystal was used for the IR examination. It allowed the researchers to study both sides of a sample, which size was no larger than 1 cubic millimeter. An IR microscope was used to scan and study the samples. And what have the researchers learned? The already existing information about the materials and the technique of the Egyptian paintings was confirmed. The fabric used for the shroud and the inserted fragments was made of linen fibers. A very limited range of pigments was used for the painting. There were 2 hydrophilic adhesives used for the shroud, a protein-based and a carbohydrate-based, bone glue and a natural gum, respectively. The pigments which were used for the painting were typical for their time. The yellow paint was made with auri pigment, which derives its name from the Latin word aurum, gold. Plaster gave the white color to the paint. The red color was obtained with the use of red ochre, a natural pigment that contains high amounts of iron. The natural organic pigment indigo was used for the blue. All the other colors and shades seen on the shroud were made by mixing these 4 pigments in different proportions. One feature typical of this type of shroud was that the face portion was glued onto the finished image later. This part was glued onto our shroud with bone glue. The portrait was made with the same pigments as the rest of the image. The research showed that there was an attempt to restore paint losses in the 19th century. Osiris's headpiece was restored with separate pieces of fabric. It's hard to say whether it was fabric from this shroud or another one. Small pieces of fabric were glued onto the duplicate canvas and retouched. Zinc white, a pigment that started to be used in the fine arts in the 19th century, was found in those areas. Similar tones were used for Anubis's garments. White lead was also found in some areas of the painting. Since white lead has been known since antiquity, it is impossible to say whether it was an original material or it was added during the process of restoration. Although the researchers have successfully completed their task, they've also posed a very important question to the restorers. Should the latest additions to the shroud be removed, even though they are a part of the piece's life and history? They do have a certain value as an example of restoration methods in the second half of the 19th century. And if they are to be removed, then how should the paint losses be filled? And should they be filled at all? The shroud had to undergo more examinations during the restoration process. These will be covered in the next episodes of the series.